I'd like to call to order the Plan and Zone Commission meeting of November 6th. I'd like to ask all those in attendance to please turn your cell phones off, not just on vibrate.
Tell them to leave.
I guess we'll get started. We have no public hearing tonight, so we'll move on to our regular meeting. Roll call, please.
Connell.
Present.
Hebner.
Here.
Ingram.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Lammers. Manus.
Here.
Med.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Reinhartz.
Here.
Tallman here, and Schneider.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. First item on our agenda tonight, Secretary's report.
Move report.
All those in favor of the Secretary's report, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it will stay as printed. Move on to comp plan. Matt, anything other than our zoning rollout?
No, I guess not. I guess we've got actually a couple of rezonings that want to get started before we're in a position to adopt a new ordinance, but you'll see those as we go along.
Thank you, Matt.
One neighborhood meeting on Thursday.
Sure. Thank you. Move on to zoning activity, Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one case under new business tonight, and that's case ORD 18-05, request by the City of Davenport to repeal and replace Title 17 of the Municipal Code entitled Zoning with a new zoning ordinance and map for the entire city. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission forward case number ORD 18-05 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, and I so move.
Second.
Case number ORD 18-05 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Matt?
Thank you, Matt Flynn, Community Planning and Economic Development Department. I don't know how you summarize a project like this. We've been at this for a good year and a half. We did have our public hearing at the last meeting. As we indicated at that time, we're still making tweaks, and we know that there are still issues that are out there, both text-related, policy-related, and map-related. But I would say, at this point, given the complexity of not only the ordinance and map, but the city itself, we're really down to just a relatively few things I want to at least touch base with you all today, let you know where we're at, and see if you're comfortable moving things forward. We suspect, and it's not just Davenport, but any political environment, there may be some things that come up once matters get before the city council. That's almost unavoidable. We've done really whatever we can to try and get the word out and get people. We're not trying to scare people, but at least let people know the gravity of what a new ordinance may have on their individual properties. But with that, I wanted, again, here's a reminder of what the goals were going into this project. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about really 5 issues that are still out there. I think this is a good thing. We have started meeting with what we call a small group of city council people. I can tell you it would be Alderman at Large Condon, Rita Rawson, 5th Ward Alder person, and Marion McGinnis, 3rd Ward Alderman, to kind of look at some of these issues. And I think that group is good. First of all, you have Alderman Condon that represents the entire city, and where a lot of the sweating has gone on would be in the central city, both the 5th and the 3rd Ward. So we have talked with them about really kind of 4 issues out there, and I wanted to at least touch base on them. One would be this recurring issue of how's the regulation of liquor, everything from beer, wine to hard liquor, how's that play into the zoning ordinance? And not to give you a long history, but it's kind of a political football hot potato, whereas even in the years that I've been here, we've gone from having the Zoning Board of Adjustment play a pretty big role in how liquor licenses are are issued and administered to probably where we're at now, where the council wants probably more say in how that's done. So, alcohol sales doesn't play a real heavy role in the ordinance right now. The question has come up, particularly in how do we deal with, and again, what's that term, Lulu? What's that stand for? Mr. Hoyer know what Lulu stands for? Locally unwanted land use. So concerns about, got that? Concern about the overconcentration of certain types of uses, particularly in our older corridors. And that could be anything from alcohol to, sometimes tattoo parlors comes up, convenience stores, lottery sales, tobacco sales. But I think we're at a point now with the council where I think without some specific direction from them that the rules that are in place now in Title V, which is licensing, is probably steering us away from doing anything or suggesting anything radical in terms of separation of those uses currently. The second one is the neighborhood commercial establishment. And remember, though, that was a provision that was really been kind of identified for a long time. It's, if you go into the central parts of the city and you see these old corner stores that are either vacant, underutilized, maybe converted to residential, should there be some mechanism to allow a conversion back to a commercial use, which was what these buildings were built for originally. And I think there's an interest in doing that, but at the same time, concern about the types of businesses that could go in there, and again, alcohol and tobacco sales primarily, and those are actually uses that are specifically called out as not permitted within these uses. So while I think there was concern about that, maybe originally, I don't believe there's a big concern. And also, as we started kind of scouring the city, I admit I am finding far fewer of these types of facilities out there. We have a number of them that are there, but are actually zoned or proposed to be zoned C1. But as far as those actually proposed to remain zoned residential, there's probably more out there, but I've only been able to find about 10 or 12, of which about 5 are on East 12th Street. If you can picture kind of before you get into the village, we're not proposing to change the zoning there to a commercial classification, and many of those uses, I think, if done correctly and modestly, can cohabitate with the neighborhood pretty well. Then probably one of the bigger ones is the whole issue of allowing duplexes in our general residential districts. And we have 4 of them. We have the R3C and we have the R4C, which are the central city designations, have a little bit lower minimum lot size compared to the R3 and the R4 districts, which are generally outside of, say, the areas south of Duck Creek, where you have a little bit larger lot size. So we heard some concerns about that, particularly how the impacts that conversion, single-family conversions to two-family may have on certain neighborhoods. What are the impacts? Well, you could have overcrowding, you could have too many cars, noise, things of that nature. So that question came up. Also, how it relates to, like I said, outside of the central cities. So in kind of brainstorming, where do we go with this? We actually came up with about 10 different ways to address that concern, from everything from doing nothing and seeing whether or not it creates a problem to just going back to special use permits for duplexes or a number of other things. But I think where we stand right now with staff is that we think that addressing some of these impacts through the building code might be the best way to address those. We also talked about do we create a duplex district? I think we talked a little bit about that, the public hearing. But currently, we think that we're not proposing any changes to the code. We're not getting strong indication that the council is not uncomfortable with that. We may do some tweaking with the building code. And again, I put accessory dwelling units. Again, the difference there is that these are units that are on properties that are owner occupied. They could either be within the principal dwelling, they could be a carriage house situation, they could be a separate cottage. But the difference is that they have a maximum area of 1,000 square feet, and also the property needs to be owner occupied. And when put on the spot and asked, well, what's the difference here in a lot of these scenarios, other than the fact that the property's owner occupied compared to a normal duplex? We're still kind of working through some of those questions, but I think they're pretty those issues are pretty manageable. A couple other things I wanted to talk about were we talked about the planned development district and the idea that the new ordinance is going to make a big effort to try and move forward and not worry about the file cabinets full of old conditions, either realized, not realized, and kind of turn the page. That being said, I know there's not only among some people perhaps on the commission, but also in council, it's like, hey, I really like that planned development approach because you were able to tailor approvals to a specific site, and quite honestly, to be able to tailor development approvals based on I guess reactions from the neighborhood. That can work. We're suggesting that conditions will continue to be a part of the recommendations as they move forward. I don't necessarily think that a planned development might be the way to do it. I know one of the questions is, well, if you have a big complex project, and let's just say, for example, a 40-acre tract on East 53rd Street. Just throwing that out there. Would it be valuable to include, as part of a zoning approval, a land use plan or a land use concept plan, which is something that the PDD mandates? I think it would be. So I don't think we necessarily need that plan development approach, but I think one thing I did want to point out we've been talking about is that if you just think in recent history, there have been a few controversial rezonings, either approved or not approved, that really hung on conditions, and how those conditions were either going to be proposed to be removed or to be established as part of a development approval. We are currently going through kind of our recent history to see where those are at, and we think that it's inevitable and reasonable at the same time to include a few specific notations in whatever ordinance adopts the new code to say, okay, for this parcel, this condition where we're limiting access to a right-in, right-out remains, just for an example. But we're continuing to push that forward. That being said, right now we're not proposing to bring back the planned unit development, particularly in its current form. And the other thing, I think most developers will tell you that the process of getting then the final development plan, having to go through this body and through the council, largely to proving that you're meeting ordinance requirements, particularly with the new code that has higher design standards, is an unreasonable extra step and takes time. And then last thing I wanted to mention were some map amendments. And as you know, we have spent probably the last 2 months scouring the city looking for changes to the map. And we've made a number of changes. We sent perhaps the last batch to Camaros to update the map the week before last. Those have been changed. To be honest, we haven't found any that have popped out lately. There may be a few, but really the one area that we wanted to at least mention, and we have not had a chance to completely do an evaluation and get back to the property owner, would be really kind of clustered on those two maps. You can see the dark areas is that, and again, this is Fairmont West Kimberly Road. There are a couple parcels right there at the southwest corner that we are proposing to be zoned C2. The owner suggested those be zoned M1. And then there's also a cluster on West Kimberly Road that is just west of West High School. And is that Lincoln or Waverly? The cross street there. Waverly? Okay.
That's Locust Street, not Kimberly.
What? Don't I say Locust Street now? Okay. I knew it was Locust Street. You can see, again, highlighted in gray, there's about 4 parcels there that we just think initially that you can see the kind of the pink color, darker pink is actually a C1. Is there really a need to have a lot more commercial at that site? That being said, we're just not ready to make that recommendation. That might be something that you would want some feedback on if you choose to table it, or you might think in terms of the big picture. This is something that the council can ultimately work out. And you know, and again, as I said, we think there'll probably be some more map issues that come up. We're not aware of any large tracts where we're having disputes with property owners, but I think as we get closer and maybe get a little bit more publicity on this effort, I can't guarantee that that some of those will come up, but I can assure you that, you know, from a staff perspective, we have spent a lot of time looking at this map, and we're comfortable moving forward, knowing that you know, we will in all likelihood be doing some routine, regular reviews of the new code, and may batch some rezonings together and come back in the future. So again, if you are comfortable moving things forward, there are your findings, and we recommend that the commission move this forward to the council with a recommendation for approval. And I did get a memo from Jeff Hoyer with some additional questions. I have not looked at it, but I will pass those down. Are there any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Matt. Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, again, thanks to you and your staff for putting this together and going through. I, again, know from experience how tedious this can be. You guys have done a good job. My question, and maybe you can't answer it quite yet, but with these anticipated changes that you've alluded to, you know, as development comes through and it goes through us and then to council and things like that, as these, again, issues or changes come up, has staff given any consideration to, you know, what will there be a definition of what a minor versus a major change might be, and will all these changes have to go through the process of going through commission and then back to council, or do you see or anticipate sometimes where
there's a fine line there, and I know you and others are familiar with the term a scrivener's error, which is, you know, it might be what it's written on paper, but clearly that's not what the intent was. I think we have some leeway to do that. I can tell you if we can batch things together, but and do things regularly, I think there's a lot of logistical reasons to do that. But I don't think that there's you know, I would say if there was a dependent that was a development that was dependent on either a change in zoning or a change in text or something of that nature, that we wouldn't expedite that review.
Okay, so maybe more on a case-by-case basis and as we
Yeah,
go forward.
That's,
Okay, thank you.
I guess that's a long way of saying that.
Would any other commissioners like to ask Matt any questions? Wow, seeing none.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt. Would anybody in the audience like to step forward, take a couple minutes to speak either in favor or against this petition? Please recognize yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Jeff Hoyer. I live in Bettendorf. I have a piece of property in Davenport. Actually, was on the map right there on number 5. I won't go into that. We're working with Matt on that right now. That was a industrial park that was made approximately late 80s. I've owned it since 89. Absolutely. I'm looking to get IMU on that property. The rest of the properties associated with that Rumens subdivision are all IMU. I'm okay with going from M1 to IMU. I'm not okay going to, I believe it's C2 on it. It diminishes the value of the property. It doesn't make sense. I'm obviously not going to use it for a chicken rendering factory or anything. It's just what it was back in the day. Having said that, that's not the reason I'm here. I'm here, I left you with some memos. My biggest concern is grandfathering in non-conforming use and how that's going to take effect. When you do a rezoning, I'm okay with the rezoning, the codification, and making it equal and whatnot. I have no problem with that. My objection to it would be is how do you handle non-conforming use right now versus when the rewrite comes in? You're going to have some issues with, for example, I'm a commercial real estate agent. I represent some people that are on West River Drive. Davenport grew out, long story short, it's M1 use, but it's an R1 zoning, non-conforming. How do you handle that? They have industrial buildings there and yada, yada. You say, well, we'll go back to the council or to the committee or whatnot. That all takes time. Here you have, for example, that one particular one where these people have had business for 40, 50 years, and they're going to be getting ready to retire and to probably sell it. So now you're saying, well, we're going to have to go through this process. Well, having a potential buyer for that, they're not going to want to do that. The time is not your friend when it comes to commercial real estate. I'm just giving you some things to speak out loud. I don't believe that a landowner should be notified when you rezone something. None of these landowners across the board have been notified. These are concerns of mine. I'll leave you at that. I just think that there should also be some, in like federal and state laws, there's administrative rules. On your zoning ordinances, there are not administrative rules. I think it's a good idea because it takes effect of what you're going to do, like your example that Mr. Tallman said. Well, do you have a minor or a major? Consistency, in my view, is one of the most important things for fairness and transparency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyer. Matt, would you want to comment on any of the concerns he
Sure.
raised?
First of all, as we we kind of talked about our methodology of amending the map or crafting the map, and making sure that we minimized not the creation of non-conforming uses was certainly up there, and I know Mr. Hoyer's concerns about the properties, and we'll be coming back with that, but to be honest, I can't tell you where there's going to be large-scale changes in non-conforming use status where they're not existing already. In some cases, and again, I'd be hard pressed to point to any. The idea of a non-conforming use is that someday that use probably should go away. But again, we've been careful not to create undue hardships out there as part of that. As far as the administrative flexibility, we hear that come up. Again, without quoting specifically what's in the code, and Scott might chime in if he could, but there is some administrative flexibility built into the code, more so than what we have currently in our ordinance. The current ordinance, we've been almost forced to do that based on the almost unworkable nature of some sections of the code, but there are actually some administrative flexibility built in, and the ability to grant minor variances as well as major hardship variances. You got anything else?
Yeah, Mr. Hoyer also spoke about knowing what the rules are for nonconforming uses. So in addition to the nonconforming use section, there is a section of administrative or transition rules at the beginning of the ordinance, which specifically outlay some of the concerns that are addressed here. So that code section would be applicable to this situation as the transition rules.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Scott. Commissioners, any questions? Would anybody else from the audience like to step forward? Commissioners, last chance. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Connell.
Yes.
Hepner.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Tallman, yes. And Schneider.
Yes.
That motion carries, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the zoning activity report.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Moving on to subdivision, Commissioner Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 4 items tonight. The first 2, Matt, can I lump these together and request they be tabled, or?
If it's okay with our council, move the table 2 items together.
Okay, case P 18-05 and find it here. Case F 18-14. Staff recommends tabling until the November 19th meeting.
Actually, I beg to differ. It is the 19th, and I'll give a plug for that. That is Monday. That's on account of council moving their meeting up a day.
Due to the Thanksgiving holiday.
That's correct.
So I so move that we table that until the November 19th meeting, those 2 items. Second.
Been moved and seconded to table the first 2 items of subdivision. Roll call, please.
Hepner.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Schneider.
Yes.
And Connell.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, my next item is case number F 18-15, request of Robert Murray for a final plat of a 2-lot subdivision located at 915 Floral Lane. Let me find it here. Staff recommends the City Plan and Zone Commission accept the listed findings and forward case F 18-15 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the 3 listed conditions, and I so move.
Case number F18-15 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Brandon?
Good evening. Brandon Melton with Planning and Economic Development Department. So this case is, as you said, for subdivision. Currently, the property is zoned M2 heavy industrial, and land use is indicated as industry. Pretty simple subdivision. The lot's being divided from east to west to a north lot, south lot, lot 1 and 2. As you mentioned, our findings, it conforms to the comprehensive plan for Davenport 2035, and the plat would also achieve consistency with subdivision ordinance. We recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the finding and forward it to City Council for approval with the following conditions. I will note that the sanitary sewer would need to be added. It was not on the original or the final plat that we'd received, so we request that that be added. And also we're seeking sanitary sewer easement. It's noted as 20 feet here, but due to the positioning of an existing structure, we're working with the engineering firm to work out how we're going to make that easement work. So it won't necessarily be 20 feet, but we're currently working with the engineer on that. We're also requesting that they remove a note about no detention required to accommodate potential future development on that site that may require detention. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Commissioner Tallman.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the 2 additional conditions and the recommendation to remove the other per staff's comments.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to add the 2 conditions and remove the 1. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is so moved and accepted. Something like that. Would anybody else have any questions of staff? Would anybody in the audience like to speak? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Johnson.
Yes.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Schneider.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
And Hebner.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, my last item tonight is case number F18-16, request of McCarthy Improvement Company and Linwood Stone Products Company for a final plat of a 2-lot subdivision, Crow Valley Plaza, 13th edition, north of East 56th Street and east of Utica Ridge Road. Staff recommends the City Plan and Zone Commission accept the listed findings and forward case F18-16 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the 7 listed conditions, and I so move.
Case number F18-16 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Commissioner Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be abstaining from this case.
Thank you. Hey, Scott.
Scott Copes, Community Planning. I apologize for having the conditions cut off, but it is corrected online now, and you probably have noticed there's the paper in front of everybody there. Yep. If you have any questions on those 7 conditions, the subdivision plat was originally for 1 lot for this area, and the developer decided to make it into 2 lots. So if you have any questions, just let me know.
Commissioner Tallman.
Thanks, Scott. Just to clarify, the applicant is aware of the 7 conditions. They've seen them.
They have been aware through the e-plan system. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Any additional questions? Thank you, Scott. Would anybody from the audience like to speak? Seeing none. Commissioners, any final questions? Roll call, please.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn abstains. Reinhardt.
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Schneider.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
Hebner.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
That's the end of my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Connell. Appears as though we have 4 upcoming cases for future business. Any additional communications, Matt?
No, I guess I'll just ask, does Monday the 19th at 5, we going to be okay with the quorum?
I had put this out in a communication, and I feel that I got enough for a quorum easily
Okay.
that responded. I think I had one said they couldn't make it, so I think we're in good shape. Any additional? Matt? Anybody else like to speak? Anybody in the audience? Nope. Commissioners, any thoughts?
I've got one.
I think we need some applause for the staff on finishing this zoning.
Matt, all of you have done a great job. I sat in a couple of meetings. I was very impressed with everybody's participation. I got to tell you, it's amazing what I saw you put together. Camara's started you out on the right track, and I think you guys brought it in over the finish line, did a great job. I'm very impressed.
Well, thanks. And I'll go back to the YouTube video, which is still out there. One of the first things we talked about was, that updated codes do have an impact, and they send a message to the development community and, out of town developers is that, they, believe it or not, they would rather see an updated code maybe with some design standards that might cost a few dollars more than having an old code that's just a nightmare to try and interpret. There'll be some growing pains, but I think we're excited to turn the page and get going with the new code.
I do have one other thought. I was a little disappointed with Jeff that being a former P&Z commissioner, what does this go forward to council, or these concerns or thoughts, or we really didn't get a chance
We'll
to
include those.
digest
I just skimmed them. To be honest, they appear to be very similar to comments that he presented to us maybe a couple months ago and that we addressed.
I just wish he would have turned them in. They could have been part of the packet, so we could have digested them before a meeting instead of while we're trying to carry on.
Yeah.
All right,
No.
I appreciate that. Commissioner Schneider?
Oh,
It's okay. That was accidental. Any additional thought?
Well, I'll pass on one anecdote. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you're tired of it. But as far as non-conforming uses, there was a community in 1952 that decided that they were going to amortize away all their non-conforming uses in 40 years. So in that community, guess who was the zoning administrator in 1992? It was me. It was Champaign. It wasn't fun. I mean, you know what? The council and pretty much went through about 25 different non-conforming uses. I think about 20 of them survived their non-conforming use status. So I say that because the being non-conforming isn't the kiss of death or doom. It does create some potentially problematic things, but it's not the incredible burden that maybe sometimes you think. That being said, there are certainly uses out there that you don't want to continue. And if you look at most of the litigation related to I don't say this is anecdotal too, that a lot of times it's these junkyards and junkyards that tend to get into these litigations as far as their non-conforming status, and we don't have any of those out there now. We've got probably some properties that need to be cleaned up, but we're going to be approaching them from a lot other different directions than just simply zoning.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Anything else?
Move to adjourn?
All those in favor of adjournment signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. I hope everybody gets out and exercises your right to vote, and please drive safely.